Joining us now is Commander Chris Hadfield. He's a former astronaut and former commander of the International Space Station. He's currently in San Francisco. Commander Chris Hadfield, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, a lot of people may not know who John Young was. Can you tell us more about who he was as a person?
Yeah, that's what I said.
He is perhaps the most experienced astronaut in all of history. He flew 6 times. He flew 4 different rocket ships. He was the first flight of Gemini. He did the first flight of the space shuttle, as you said. He walked on the moon. John was a fascinating, devoted, and passionate, and really fearless man, and just a role model to so many astronauts, and including the 6 people that are up at the space station right now. A life really well lived, and a good friend of mine.
As you say, a good friend, and you knew him personally, and there's so many lovely stories about him, including that he took a corned beef sandwich up on a flight.
On his very first flight, on the first flight of Gemini, actually, he realized, hey, we're just people, and there's nothing magic going on here, and we're going to get hungry. And he brought a corned beef sandwich with him, and he took some heat for it. But he went on to be the chief of the astronaut office longer than any other astronaut, and to have a career that all of us just marvel over. So it looks like NASA got over the corned beef sandwich eventually. But what an incredible guy. And he wasn't interested in the past. If you talk to him about what's going on in space, he wouldn't want to talk about his previous flights or having walked on the moon. He's interested in what's going on now. What are the upcoming moon missions? Where are we headed next? What are the problems we need to solve right now? He's just a forward-thinking individual right up until the last day.
So it sounds like he was still very involved in what NASA was doing. Was he still working on projects, as far as you know?
When John retired officially from NASA after 42 years in 2004, I think, the gift that we gave him from the astronaut office was a permanent access badge to come to the Johnson Space Center, to come into any meeting he ever wanted to come to lend both his expertise but also his engineering acumen. And John would come into meetings for years afterwards as a retired person, just because not only was he interested, but he had so much to contribute. Of course, he was 87 when he passed away, and age catches up with us all. But John, he was as much a part of the space program as anybody has ever been.
I know you say that he was very forward-looking, but how did he view his legacy? Did he ever talk to you about that?
He wasn't the type of guy to talk about legacy, but he wrote a book, and in it he talked about the fact that he was just so happy to have had all this opportunity, and given the chance to change anything, he would do it all again the same way. He would have brought the corned beef sandwich again too, I think. But huge risks. When we flew the space shuttle, we had never flown that rocket before. The first time we ever tried that rocket, he and Bob Crippen were on board.
We do seem to be...
a really complex risk to sign up to.
We do seem to be losing a generation of these astronauts that were pioneers. How do you think that he will be viewed by the next generation of astronauts? Do you think he will continue to inspire them?
Oh, sure. He's a historic figure. He was legend when I was hired as an astronaut 25 years ago. He'll continue to be legend. But the most experienced American astronaut now is Peggy Whitson. She's got all the records. And there are 6 people up on the space station right now. And we have the biggest rocket that exists in the world is launching at the end of this month. The Chinese are landing on the moon with a small robot rover later this year. So is the Indian Space Agency. And all of that is built on the legacy of the people that have gone before. John would be very proud of all the work he'd done, but much more interested in what's happening this year, and how are we going to take advantage of everything we've learned, and how can we turn that back to be useful to understanding the Earth itself. John was just as passionate as he could be about it all, and just gave his all to contribute to make all this stuff happen.
As forward-looking as a man that he sounds like he was, it must be quite sad, though, for the community to be losing more and more of these men who were the first to walk on the moon.
Oh, I don't think the fact that they've reached the end of their natural lives diminishes anything. There's, of course, grief and sadness. When we went on vacation, John would take care of our dog. He was a lovely guy. But I think more, we are just immensely proud of what each of the astronauts and all of the engineers and people that work in the space business have been able to accomplish. When I was born, no one had ever flown in space. All of this is less than even my lifetime. So there's still a great newness to it and a great delight and inspiration that comes from it. And John is one of those stars of the past that people will look at and wonder as they're trying to decide, what could I contribute? How could I be part of this? How can I make myself somebody like that?
All right, Commander Chris Hadfield, former commander of the International Space Station, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts and memories of the astronaut John Young. John Young, who walked on the moon and flew the first space shuttle mission, has died at the age of 87.